Hello, Henrico County students. My name is Nat Draper. I'm with the James River Association. We're one of your community partners here in Henrico. We're at beautiful Deep Bottom Park in eastern Henrico County. Today, we want to talk to you about the 51st Earth Day on April 22nd. Back in 1970, the first Earth Day was started. And ever since then, these last 51 years, we've slowly started to increase our environmental health with clean water and protecting the air. Today, we're going to take you on an adventure into the wetlands and other areas of Deep Bottom Park for your enjoyment.
Hey there, Charles Johnson here. I'm here to talk to you about the State of the James. The State of the James is a biannual report that the James River Association puts out every 2 years. This coming fall, 2021, we'll be reintroducing the newest State of the James. What we're looking at is the State of the James of 2019, to where we had 18 different factors allowing us to know how healthy the James River is doing. On this report, we look at abiotic factors as well as biotic factors. So some of those are our fish species like our smallmouth bass, brook trout, bald eagle, striped bass. Some abiotic factors that we look at are nitrogen reductions, stormwater pollution controls, phosphorus reduction, as well as agricultural pollution controls. One of the key factors in the State of the James that we focus on is sediment reduction. As you all may know, sediment is the #1 pollutant that the James River is facing. So how can we help the reduction of sediment? One thing that you can do at home is plant more trees. That's going to hold back that sediment from being introduced to our waterways. With less sediment in our waterways, that's going to increase our submerged aquatic vegetation, or our underwater grasses. It allows for a suitable habitat for them to grow, which puts in oxygen into our water, as well as increases habitat for our fish and wildlife. In 2019, the James River scored a B-. The river health was at a B- as well. Our river restoration progress was at a C+. We're doing really good in the last couple years. So stay tuned for our 2021 State of the James. Welcome. We are on 4 Mile Creek, a major tributary of the James River. We're going to be talking about some birds that can be found here on 4 Mile Creek in the park of Deep Bottom. One of those species is called the prothonotary warbler. The prothonotary warbler is a yellowish in color bird with a bluish gray wing pattern that goes all the way towards its tail. These prothonotary warblers like to nest in flooded forests and wetlands, just like here at Deep Bottom. The prothonotary warbler has become endangered due to habitat loss. That habitat loss is due to humans developing areas that we didn't live before. They are a migratory species that nest here during the spring and summer. While they're here, they'll be laying 2 sets of eggs as well. As you're paddling on Deep Bottom in 4 Mile Creek, you can see the nest boxes that are on the banks of the rivers to help them with their habitat loss. This is the summer home for our prothonotary warbler. Virginia Commonwealth does a lot of research on the prothonotary warbler. One key way that we can increase their habitat is by installing these bird boxes, or these prothonotary boxes, in or near our waterways. So as you're traveling on 4 Mile Creek, keep your eyes peeled, because they're all up and down this waterway. The diet of our prothonotary warbler consists of aquatic insects as well as terrestrial insects. Some of the other bird species that you can find here in 4 Mile Creek are your red-winged blackbirds, double-crested cormorants, bald eagles, and my favorite, the osprey. With finding so many birds here, that's a good indication that we have a great ecosystem that can support biodiversity in our bird species.
Charles, what is this place and why are we here?
So this is a wetland. There's many different names for our wetlands, but this is the perfect outdoor classroom. Some of the benefits of our wetlands, they have sponge-like qualities that reduce floods. They also are called nature's kidneys because they are really good at reducing excess nutrients from going into our waterways. Another great benefit of our wetlands are they serve as nature's nurseries. So it allows our species to raise their young here. They have an abundance of food, shelter, and water. And the fourth benefit of our wetland, it benefits human consumption.
So Charles, it looks like we have some cattails next to us. Is that the only thing that grows out here?
No, there's an abundance of species that grow here in our wetlands. So one of the species that you can find here in the wetland is called arrow arum. As you can see, the leaf shape is similar to an arrowhead that you may have on the tip of a bow and arrow. Some of the other species that you can find here, you have wild rice, cattail. Some of your tree species that you can find here would be your sycamore, bald cypress, and oak. These species that you can find here have really complex root systems that hold back that hydraulic soil that's really good at absorbing that excess water.
Well, that's a pretty interesting looking tree there.
Yes, that is the American sycamore. The American sycamore can be identified by its flaky-like bark. It can be white in color with a grayish-brown bark as well. These trees like to grow extremely close to our waterways, to where their roots are almost wet daily. Historically, these trees were used by our natives to create their dugout canoes. It made it really easy on our natives to cut these trees down and burn them out close to the proximity of the waterways that they would be traveling in. Another species that our natives would use for their purpose would be the arrow arum. They would turn the arrow arum's roots into a paste that they would use for a bread-like substance. In our arrow arum, you can see the leaf structure here, and they are found all throughout our wetland.
So Charles, what are some everyday choices that we can make to help the James?
Some of the key things that you can do in your everyday choices would be picking up litter as you are out and about on your waterway. You also can pick up after your dog to make sure its waste does not get into our waterways. And you can reduce your water consumption as you are at home taking showers and brushing your teeth. Those are some everyday choices that you can do to reduce your impact on our watershed.
So today we're going to be looking at a couple abiotic water quality factors. We're going to be looking at pH, turbidity, dissolved oxygen, nitrates, and temperature. And for doing that, we're going to use some of the vernier probeware that you guys actually have in your classroom. So let's go ahead and get all set up and we'll take some samples. So what I'm doing right here is I am loading up my vernier app, and I'm going to be Bluetooth connecting our probeware to it. So it's going to take me just a second to get it set up. And I'll select my new experiment and then my wireless devices. Opening up my Bluetooth and connect it to my dissolved oxygen meter. And now I can actually take some samples of it. So I'm going to open up my probe, which you'll see has a pretty cool end that we're just going to drop right into the water. And we are are now collecting our dissolved oxygen. Measurement 1. And our dissolved oxygen is at 9.45 milligrams per liter. So we'll have to compare and see where that stands on some other locations. We're also going to test the pH using one of our vernier probes. So if I switch over to my new experiment, wireless devices, and turn this guy on and connect. And we'll start collecting. So our pH here, pretty close to 5.54, 5.56. We've collected the pH, we've collected the dissolved oxygen. So let's collect some additional data, but we're going to switch over from doing the probes to some of our other measurements. So we said our dissolved oxygen was 9.4 and our pH is about 5.54. So let's see what we get for turbidity, nitrates, and temperature.
We're going to conduct our next abiotic test, which is nitrates. How we're going to do that, we're going to fill up our sample tube to 10 milliliters and use one of our tabs that will change colors based upon how many nitrates can be found in our waterway. Take a little water out, add our tab in. Now we're going to shake this tablet until it dissolves. As I'm doing this, we can look at our nitrate scale, which can be found in the middle of this column here. So based upon how many nitrates can be found in our waterway, it's going to change the color of our sample to more of a pink color the more nitrates that we find. Do you all think it's a good thing to have nitrates in our waterways? So we actually do not want to find nitrates in our waterways. And if we find any, we hope it's at the bare minimum, around 5 ppm.
Where would these nitrates come from?
That is a great question. So excess nitrates are going to come from runoff, which are going to come from your fertilizers and other excess nutrients that humans would put on the land. Great question.
So what happens if we have too many nitrates in the water?
So if we have too many nitrates in the water, that's going to lead to something called an algal bloom. That's causing a lot of algae to grow really fast in a process called eutrophication. Once the algae dies back, it's then going to deplete the dissolved oxygen, so then it would cause a negative impact to our fish and wildlife in and near the waterway. All right, now we have our test results in for our nitrates. The color did not change to a pinkish color at all. The only color that I'm seeing is the brown from the sediment that we have in our waterway.
So you said there's a lot of sediment in the water. Is there a way to measure that?
Yes, so we can measure how much sediment is in our waterway by doing our turbidity test. So our results today for nitrates is under 5 ppm.
So I'll add it to our board. But Charles, what's ppm?
ppm is the unit of measurement that we use for nitrates, dissolved oxygen, and a couple other abiotic tests. And ppm stands for parts per million.
Awesome. Well, what else can we test while we're out here? We have temperature, right?
Yes, let's conduct temperature using our temperature probe. All right, so here we have our temperature probe that's going to help us measure the temperature of the James River today. Going to leave our temperature probe in there for about 30 seconds to allow it to calibrate to the water temperature. So our water temperature today in the James River, we're at 18.1 degrees Celsius.
Now, is that a good water temperature?
Yes, it is a good water temperature for this time of the year. We hope our water temperature is slightly less than our air temperature for this time of the year. So for it to be about 21 degrees Celsius air temperature, 18 is a really good reading for today.
Awesome. So I will add 18 to our board, 18 degrees Celsius. So there's one last thing that we can measure, and that's turbidity. What is turbidity, Charles?
Turbidity measures the suspended particles that we have within our waterway. It also measures how clear or cloudy the water is.
So how do we measure that exactly?
So we have two ways to measure turbidity. We can use a turbidity tube, which we have today, as well as a Secchi disc. Our Secchi disc we have in the boat here. How this works, on the bottom of the Secchi disc, you have a black and white pattern. This is on opposite ends of the color spectrum, which allows us to see how far the light will penetrate into our waterway. So what we would do, we would lower our Secchi disc down into the water, and based upon how far we can see, we then mark off on this rope here.
All right, so this is a turbidity tube. It goes from 0 centimeters all the way up to 120 centimeters. Basically, I'll take a sample of the water from 4 Mile Creek. It does have a black and white target like Charles talked about in the Secchi disc, and we'll see how much water I can see into the target, okay? And that'll tell us our turbidity reading. So first thing is to grab a sample of water. And I'm filling up the tube right now. You guys can see that. Once the tube's filled up, I take it to a flat location, and it has a pressure knob at the bottom. And I will put my eye right here on the knob so I can see the target, and I cannot see the target. So I'm gonna start letting water out. And I'm looking down into the turbidity tube. You can see the water slowly going out of the turbidity tube. A good turbidity reading is around 50 centimeters or higher. And so I have water going down right now. I do not see the target. I'm still looking for that black and white target at the bottom. I think you can see the water slowly going through the tube. I still do not see the target. We recently had a rain, and rain can be one thing that can impact the turbidity readings. Still no picture of the target. Okay. I'm still waiting to see the target, and right there, stop. All right, so I can see the black target. I'm gonna look at my reading. And so the turbidity reading is actually 25 centimeters. Here's 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So that's quite a bit of turbidity in the water. I would probably classify this as not a great reading on the turbidity scale. So 25 centimeters is what we will be writing on our whiteboard. So to quickly review our results, I'm going to start off with all the 5 abiotic tests. We'll start off with pH. We got a result of 5.5. And you guys know on the pH scale, it goes from 1 to 14, 7 being neutral. So our sample was a little bit basic, and that's a pretty good reading. 5.5 is not really an issue, so I would give that an A- to B+. All right, turbidity at 25 centimeters is really not a great reading. That is a lot of turbidity in the water. Light will not be able to penetrate into the underwater grasses. I'm gonna give that a C+ to a C. All right, dissolved oxygen at 9.4 parts per million is a really good reading. Anything over 7 parts per million, fish are very happy. Remember, they are breathing dissolved oxygen through their gills, and 9.4 is a great reading. I'm gonna give that an A-, okay? Nitrates at less than 5 parts per million is also a good reading. We really don't want nitrates in the water because nitrates can lead to an algal bloom or eutrophication. So less than 5 parts per million is also a great reading. I'm gonna give that an A. And then temperature at 18 degrees Celsius is normal. That is a good reading on the report card, and we'll give that also an A. So if you look at all 5 results, A-, B+, We have a couple C's, we have a couple A's here. I think overall, our reading would be pretty close to our State of the James report at around a B to maybe a B+.
Thank you for celebrating Earth Day with Henrico County Schools and the James River Association.
We hope you enjoyed our virtual canoe paddle today, and hopefully you learned a few things along the way.
And we challenge you to get out on Earth Day, April 22nd, 2021. Make sure you get out and hike, bike, play some basketball, maybe even do some fishing, but enjoy the outdoors and everything that the natural world has to offer.